I don't know. We're going to find out some more on this. Congressman Byron Donald is joining us right now on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. Maybe we talk about this, get an update, the latest on what is going on with oversight and looking into this. How are you this morning, sir?
Doing good, Drew. How are you?
You see that last night? Gary Shapley on with Brett Baer and talking about all of this. And look, he brings the receipts. He brings the receipts on all of it. Weren't allowed to ask about the big guy. Weren't allowed to include certain names in document requests and search warrants. There's so much there. The receipts that he's bringing, and then the second whistleblower. Maybe you could talk a little bit about where we are with this and your thoughts up to this point.
Well, the first thing is that, we had a town hall last night, and then when I got home, I was like, well, let me see what CNN is talking about. And, they were talking about Trump and then what Chris Christie was saying about Trump. So that surprisingly didn't make the air last night, Drew, on CNN. I was very confused about that. Look, at any rate, the receipts that he has are impressive. You could see clearly that the IRS investigative team, they were doing their job. And like we've been saying now for about a week or so, is that you have the political brass at the IRS, you have the political brass at the Department of Justice. They were stonewalling this investigation. They were shutting it down. They were making it take significantly longer than it needed to take. All this information, Drew, this stuff probably could have all come out before the 2020 elections.
Right.
But you have elements, you have these political holdovers. And, let me take a step back. People say, well, hold on, how could, people within the Trump administration at IRS and DOJ have this effect? Because you do have these political holdovers from administration to administration. They do exist.
Yeah.
And they're easily in these agencies saying, well, hold on, because of this is a politically sensitive person, you got to really, really make sure we got to run traps. Regular Americans don't get this kind of treatment.
Right.
They don't get this treatment. And frankly, Republicans don't get this treatment either.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other story for another day. But I think where we are right now is we are actually going to be interviewing some key people. I can't say who yet because they're agreeing to come in and interview under oath with oversight staff. That stuff's going to be going on over the next couple of weeks. The members are going to have an opportunity to review these interviews, take part in these interviews, and we're going to continue to get more information. We're going to continue to subpoena more financial records. And what we're doing now is really laying out clearly the movement of funds and where these monies end up,
right?
Like in whose pockets, even if those pockets happen to be the big guy. That's what we're doing right now.
Good. And by the way, for people that are listening, if you're wondering whether or not this is going to be hitting the target politically and whether or not these investigations are going to lead to more and more involvement with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and the like, you'll know because there'll be another Chinese balloon crossing the border, or aliens will drop out of the sky, or there's going to be some other story. You'll see it. Something's going to pop. I don't know, another Trump audio tape. Who knows what it's going to be?
That's what I'm saying. It's already started.
Right.
When we dropped about the FBI 1023 form, surprisingly, all of a sudden the transcript was available about Donald Trump. Then you have Gary Shapley come out. Oh my gosh, here's the audio that went along with the transcript. CNN obtained the audio.
Yeah.
No, this is a leak out of the Department of Justice, which, by the way, is illegal. They're not allowed to leak information in a criminal probe because he's under indictment, so this is now a criminal probe. They are not allowed to leak that. That is against the law. CNN doesn't have a problem with leaking that stuff. They're going to do it because it helps them, and it helps Joe Biden. And that's where we are right now. So we are hitting home. I mean, we're hitting a target because the leaks have intensified. And then the last piece, like I said, the CNN, MSNBC, they're not even covering this story.
Yeah.
True, they're not even covering it.
It's
that's what's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and look, the thing that we've talked about many times is people are getting their media and their information from all kinds of sources. And in the alphabet media is no longer the kind of powerhouse that they used to be. and people are starting to see more and more what's been happening with all of this information. And I just hope ultimately that this is something that the American people are going to objectively look at and say, we can't do this again. And on the other side of it, see what kind of attacks have been happening with Trump. And let me just say this too, and and then we can move on. And it's this, when people talk about Trump appointed or people that were around when Bill Barr and others, and when Trump was there, and why didn't he do anything, and pinning that on Trump. Do we quickly forget how all of this started? And in 2016 and 2017, when people were coming along in Trump's orbit, and we're just going to be real for a second. All the people that came in around in his orbit, someone who's outside of politics and outside of DC, and all the whispers in his ear of the people he should bring in and the people he should hire and the best of the best. These are the best people. And they all turned out to be the worst. They all turned out to be the people that from the inside were able to mix and muck everything up. From the inside, they didn't have his best interest at heart. How quickly we forget about all of that.
Look, I think what you're saying is really important. This is the tough side of when somebody comes in from outside of politics that's not had to deal with the staffers in these agencies, people who've been around long enough to know what goes on in these agencies. They still are tied to Washington. Let's be very clear. They're tied to Washington. Look, Drew, we're in the middle of going through appropriations right now. Okay. Yeah. So you have Freedom Caucus members are saying, listen, and not just Freedom Caucus members, there's more members than that. They're like, listen, we got to cut like another $115 billion out of these budgets. Like, no, we're not going to vote for that. So let's find the money right now. Let's cut it. When you say that, you have the legacy staff and some of the legacy members, they're kind of like, wait, what? You want to cut more money? We're like, yeah, we want to cut more money. And the mental gymnastics is hard for them. They're like, oh my gosh, but how? And how's that going to end up? And we're like, that's not our problem. We're trying to get back to pre-COVID spending levels. Like, that wasn't a talking point. Did you think we were joking when we were saying that? That wasn't something just cool to say. Like, we mean it. And this is the time to do it. And so for DC to actually do something like cut spending, the reason why, Americans are just always so like concerned, like, why can't they do it, is because the entire inertia, the entire thought process in that town is to continue to raise spending. Doing the opposite is like cutting off your left arm for them.
Right.
That's what President Trump went into early on in his administration. When he's like, no, this is what we're going to do with China. We're going to do tariff policy. No, here's what we're going to do with we're going to move the embassy. No, here's what we're doing on the border. You have pushback from these political people who are Republicans because they've been in the quote unquote swamp for so long. For them, it was like cutting off their left arm. Yeah. And that's why some of those early people didn't last long because they were into what was already going on in Washington.
Yeah, they kind of played along. They played the game.
Yeah.
And let's talk about something while we're on the topic. I might as well say this as well. Let's be honest about a couple of other things too when it comes to politics and the things we discovered because of what was uncovered due to all the things that were going on with the former president and what they were doing to him. And it's this. There were battles that we never thought for a second to take a step back and look at the present time in the moment and decide whether or not things that we have been talking about for the longest time pertain to the moment that we're in. For example, you brought up the tariffs. You remember, like I remember, nobody wanted to touch that topic. Everybody was like, tariffs? A Republican talking about tariffs? You can't do this. What do you, we got to be honest. The conversations that were going on at that moment in time. It was like taboo. You couldn't say that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, hold on. Can we talk about the reality of the moment? We don't live in the world we wish that we lived in. We live in the world that exists. And sometimes it's a little different. So let's talk about it. Look, it may be the right thing. It may not be the right thing. But don't go off on talking points that are old classic talking points on what conservatives believe when ultimately, in the moment we're in, we have to examine what's happening. Does that make sense? Because you remember that too.
I remember. Listen, before his tariff policy, our lunch was getting eaten. by other countries in the world, China primarily, and everybody else. And the only way you could get those countries back to the table to renegotiate bad deals from the past, put together by Bill Clinton, by Barack Obama, yes, by George W. Bush, and many other people, is you had to start slapping them with higher fees through tariff policy. That's the way you can get them back to the table. It was tough for free market conservatives to agree with tariff policy. I remember those discussions, but it was the only way to get these other countries back to the table to get a better deal for America. Donald Trump understood that, and he knew that, and he got a lot of pushback from Republicans in the Beltway, who for a long time were like, we don't believe in tariffs. What's this guy talking about? That's not what we should be aiming for. But you can't have trade deals that put America last. You can't have that, because then you can't have the economic philosophy you truly want if there are bad trade deals in your economics.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's the reality that was in place when Donald Trump came in. But I think, look, now the question is, what's America going to do going forward?
Sure.
That's going to be the big question. What are we going to do going forward? And I could tell you, Drew, what this current president's doing, this stuff is not in the interest of the American people. It might be the reason he's doing these things is because Hunter got $8.3 million.
Yeah.
And, other people are getting other money.
Right. And all of it's not sustainable. I mean, none of this is sustainable. And I think we all realize that. And all the times that people were saying things like, kids and grandkids, and everybody's like, well, I'm the kid and the grandkid, and I don't feel anything. Well, just wait. It's not like it's never going to happen. It is going to happen. But Joe Biden said this yesterday, and I think you can, here, listen.
And guess what? Bidenomics is working.
Bidenomics is working, Congressman. Stop.
Oh, gosh. Is this guy serious?
He is. Of course he is. I mean, technically it is. I mean, if Bidenomics is high inflation and all the things that we're dealing with and all of the pain that we're feeling at the pump and the like, I guess technically it is. And he's even talking about, the coal-fired plants in America. You're not going to see any of them. We're not going to be building them. And, we're going to make it so it's impossible for somebody to even want to do that. All of this,
Bidenomics. Oh my gosh. High inflation.
Yeah.
Wages are higher, but your purchasing power has been destroyed.
Right.
Energy production is becoming more reliant on foreign companies and foreign countries, just like Joe Biden's financial checkbook is reliant on foreign countries and foreign companies. I mean, this guy is ridiculous. Yeah. And even the White House, when they're coming out and saying this stuff, they're all like, oh, yeah. This sounds good, right? Corinne Jean-Pierre. Oh, it just rolls off the tongue. It sounds so good. Like, no, lady. Nobody cares how it sounds. The reality is it sucks. And that's what's going on. Yeah. And everybody knows it. Listen, the country, 20% of Americans believe the country is on the right track. 20%. You have 16% of Americans actually believe that Bidenomics has worked for them. And you know who those 16% are? That is the left elite that is going to get all these tax credits from the Green New Deal stuff. Yeah. That's these radical people who are getting their student loans forgiven, by the way, which is unconstitutional. So, yeah, for that 15%, it's working. But for everybody else, it's not.
Right. No doubt. All right. I'm looking at the time. We got to run. Congressman Byron Donald is joining us on Daybreak, 92.5 Fox News. All right, my friend. We'll see you later. Thanks for joining us again. I appreciate it.
See you, Drew.
All right. See you.
Thanks.